Hello, and welcome to Good Burger Reviews. My name is John, and I'm doing a brand new 2025 movie review. And that movie is Coyotes.
Guys. Oh, there's something outside.
This movie was released in October of 2025. It is starring Justin Long and Kate Bosworth. The movie is directed by Colin Minahan. Basic overview. Trapped in their Hollywood Hill homes, a family fights for survival when caught between a raging wildfire and a pack of savage coyotes. I have one quick question. Are these coyotes ugly enough to hold their own on the big screen? So this movie was listed as a horror comedy, and I think right out the gate it struggles with figuring out whether or not it's leaning into the horror or leaning into the comedy, because it seems to be doing both, and the tonal shifts in this movie make it a little bit discombobulated when watching. So let me break it down with the positives, the negatives, and all that, and we can figure out if Coyotes is worth the watch while it is on a limited release in the theaters. So let's talk about the positives. I would say right out the gate, the setting. This being in the Hollywood Hills of California, the wildfires, the ravaged coyotes. It's a great scene. I think there's a solid opener with a solid coyote kill. I think the coyotes are done quite well. I would assume that these are CGI coyotes, which you can barely tell that they're CGI, but they are. And overall, I think there's some decent tension, but the tension does get broken up a little bit by the comedy and some of the drama. Another part where this movie is savage, I would say, or decent, is the coyotes themselves are fierce, they're vicious, and it's fairly gory in this. The coyote attacks are brutal to watch. Now, even though this movie felt like it was very contemporary, very modern with the times now, you see cell phones and such, and very Gen Z commentary from the youngest actor, stuff like that, but it also gave a throwback feeling, like with the way the story was being told, i.e. like when they introduce each character, there's this like cartoon flash with the name of what the name's character is, and that's pretty neat. It gave that vibe, like almost like a Marvel type of vibe. But it helped with getting the characters straight and just made the story fun. Now, I would say overall the characters are fairly decent, even though sometimes they kind of have a basic feel to them. You do have Justin Long and Kate Bosworth as the main couple starred, and their child. I think the child does really well. There's also another character that's like this visitor to the neighboring property she's like a lady of the night. They refer to her as the lady of the night. And she's extremely comical. And then there's also like this rodent killer guy that shows up in a van. He was really done well too. I mean, these characters, even though there's a slight basic feel to them, there's also like the characters themselves are a little bit extreme, a little bit exaggerated, and comical, because again, this is a horror comedy. So let's get into what I'm mixed about. I think the biggest mix here for me is Justin Long and Kate Bosworth. I feel as our leads, because it's such a big cast, it doesn't always seem like they're really the leads, even though Justin Long, his performance is decent, but I feel like he was trying to do this comic edge thing, and it kind of wasn't working. And then maybe it was a little bit. I just feel like his character was the one that tonally shifts the most, because he seems really serious, then he's being funny, then he's being dramatic. There's like this one scene where he's extremely dramatic, towards the end, where he's like realizing that he needs to change. And it just seemed like this scenario, even though it is intense with coyotes attacking, like it didn't seem like it would drive about where he goes, how dramatic he gets, how life-changing being attacked by a coyote is for him. And I think that's where I get this tonal shift from, because the characters overall are kind of exaggerated and funny, but then when they start being really serious and dramatic, it kind of makes you think like, oh, they're going this way now. And with that is like, sometimes it leans into the horror, because the coyotes are gruesome. And the but there's also funny moments, especially like with Justin Long trying to be funny, and like the rodent guy who's also very comical. And then the side Lady of the Night character, she was really comical as well. So when I talk about the negatives, I really say the big negative here for me is I think the whole project put together kind of gives this basic, generic horror B movie feel to it. The other thing is how they kind of piece it all together about why the Coyotes are acting so insane. And I will, like I normally do in the negatives, is just give a little bit of a spoiler warning because it's really why the Coyotes get so fierce with these people and how this kind of all unravels. How it unravels in a way where it's almost starting to feel apocalyptic because there's a hurricane, trees fall down, then there's wildfire, so you have wild rain, wildfire. The Coyotes are coming out of off the mountains. They started off by explaining it as they're driven off the mountain because of the wildfires. But then we come to find out that the real reason why the Coyotes are there is because they have their babies somewhere along the way the babies were born, and somewhere within their house, the main house here, the babies are in the wall, and that's why they had called the rodent guy, because they thought they had rats, but it turned out it was the baby coyotes in the wall. And this whole thing about like how they kind of solved the problem by figuring out that the baby coyotes are in the wall, getting the baby coyotes out, and placing them in front of the coyotes like this will just end well. And it kind of reminded me, and I talked about this in the Bayou, where it kind of was ripping off the whole Jurassic Park 3 thing, where they steal alligator eggs like they do in Jurassic Park 3, where they steal a dino egg, and the way the gators and the dinos react to them having their babies. Very similar, like also in The Lost World, when they kidnap the baby T-Rex, and how parent animals, act when you have their babies. We also saw this in Death of Unicorn this year, where the baby unicorn was the one that they get, and Mama and Papa unicorn show up to save the day. Well, it's kind of the same here, but it just doesn't come off as like, it just seems like thrown in at the last second, like, oh, they were here because, oh, babies were in the wall. It was very last minute. And I feel like for as psycho as the Coyotes were acting, and the young girl who stars, the Gen Z character, she's comparing it to like sharks, and she's the one that comes up with the idea of kind of building a cage, like a shark cage, to kind of figure out a way to escape out of their house and still be safe from the coyotes. And I just think these coyotes were so wild that I don't think they would have just allowed anyone to just set the babies down and be like, yeah, okay, you had my baby, and not like go straight for a kill. But at the end of the day, this was a horror comedy. It was kind of being schlocky and kind of being serious all at the same time. And it was kind of just fun. So, I mean, I can kind of let this stuff slide. When it comes to B-sided or B-horror, it doesn't have to be top-notch storylines. We just want the schlock, the fun, and the gore. At the end of the day, I'm going to get down to business on this one. Overall, if you're into creature features and you like that kind of stranded, in the woods or in a house at night, all the spooks, the bumps, all the typical creature tropes are there, the creeping and the sneaking around and the viciousness. So at the end of the day, I think when I blend how I feel about the whole thing, because there are some there are some tonal shifts, and I feel like Justin Long, unfortunately, considering how great he was in movies like Jeepers Creepers and The Barbarian, he kind of slipped on this one. So I'm going to end up blending that all together and say this really comes down to a basic burger. It's a decent one-time watch. I don't know if it's one that you need to run out to the theater to go see. Maybe it's one that you can wait till it comes out on streaming, and I'm sure it won't be long till it's streaming, hopefully before Christmas. Don't forget to stay scared when wild coyotes run amok and break into your home to rescue their babies.
It's like in that movie. You know the one where all the birds attack everyone?
The birds.